Welcome to the Send More Offers Real Estate Show with Brandon Barnes, showing you how to do wholesaling deals consistently without having to go on seller appointments. Learn the key tips and strategies that Brandon's students use to find deeply discounted properties that are pennies on the dollar, all while avoiding wear and tear on their vehicle, body, and freedom. Whether you're looking for your first deal or your next deal, it's time to send more offers with your host, Brandon Barnes.
Welcome to the show, David. Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me, brother. Glad we're getting to do this.
Man, I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, especially everything that I've read about you, everything that I've seen. And, I want to start by thanking you for your service. You are an amazing story. And just from 2015 till now, you mentioned going from in 5 years from a negative net worth to a millionaire with 100 plus rental units, transitioning from active duty to life as a civilian. So let's just jump right into it. Like, how did you have this, interest? Where did the interest come from? And how did you really put things together to be able to make that transition so seamlessly?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I squandered the first 7-8 years. I was active duty doing all the stupid stuff that most service members do with their money. And then in 2015, probably July, August, somebody handed me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Read it, was hooked, read a bunch of other books, bought a duplex in December of 2015. Lived in one side, rented the other, the house hack, which is my favorite strategy for newer investors. I've done it now 3 times. And I went from that deal, and it was like 2 years before I could save up to the next one. We bought a 10 unit and then just kind of slowly rolled from there. And by the time I left the military in 2021, I had 120 doors or so, $1 million net worth. And more importantly, I didn't have to take a job when I exited. So it's pretty nice.
Wow. And so I think I had that wrong. I think I understood it wrong. I thought that you amassed these doors, these units, and as soon as you transitioned back to civilian life, you did this while you were still in the military. That's amazing, bro. Was there an influence? Were there other people that was giving you advice? Like, how were you able to make both of these worlds work?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I've been out of the military now for 2 years, and I slowed down on buying a little bit over the last year. And so to date, I've still purchased more property while in the military than since I exited, which is interesting.
It is.
And just, a lot of networking, podcasts. I mean, everyone does like self-education, right? Podcast, books. I've read 200-300 books, bunch of podcasts, and then just networking, getting around people who were doing the same thing, who had the same goals, and having them kind of push you to the next step, because it is easy to let off the gas. And then, I jumped into, I don't know if you know Ryan Dossey. He runs a Create Cash Flow wholesaling coaching. Okay. I jumped into his group, and I was floating around a couple other groups as well, but his was the one that I actually walked through the curriculum on, and just kind of set up a wholesaling company towards the end there. And so I would wholesale 2 or 3 and then flip 1 and hold 1. And that was, I probably added 4 or 5 single families to that. But the crazy thing from that is, while I was doing that, I sent a letter to this guy, and he's like, I'll sell you that house, but only if you buy everything else. I'm like, well, what's everything else? And so in one deal, I added 79 doors with a 40-unit hotel, a 23-unit apartment, a 15-unit apartment, and the single family to the portfolio. So that was a big boost there towards the end. But we were doing about 4 deals a month, as I was exiting the military.
That is amazing. I got for that, to do one deal, 79 doors. That is wild. I know it comes up. There's a lead that we're actually talking to right now that I know he has a bunch of doors. It's hard to pull those package deals together. But it's helpful, when you're already a credible investor, you already have some properties, right? You have some holdings. So I'm sure that helped, you actually going into this the right way. And I think one of the interesting parts that is, particularly unique about your story is that most folks that I know of or that I've read about or heard of that started off, as a buy and hold investor first, like never touched wholesaling after that, right? Unless you started wholesaling, right? Most folks will say, hey, look, I'm just going to continue to buy from wholesalers, buy on market properties. What was that experience like for you, like kicking off a wholesaling journey? And do you actively still work to find off market deals yourself now?
Yeah, it's interesting. You're absolutely right about that. Wholesaling is usually like the first step, and there's a couple reasons for that, I suppose. Main being that you've got to feed the beast. Wholesaling is not a passive job at all. Right. I mean, I'm sure there's a story or two where people are like, I hired myself out of the wholesaling company, but like not for long and not successfully, because whoever's taking it over is probably not as driven as you are with it. And exactly. So it's a pretty interesting and intense business. So I actually, it's funny because it's full circle. I sold it about a year and a half ago. I had some shuffles with the team, people left, in not the most amicable way. And I was just, I was like, I'm going to continue working on my brand and my more passive stuff, and I'm not going to rebuild the team. And so I sold the company to a friend, and then, he ended up deciding he was going to focus solely on one market, Southern California. And so ironically, he sold the company back to two good friends of mine here locally. And they were like, hey, you want like a 20% stake in this? So you can do we'll only use you for like consulting stuff. So like, I guess I'm technically back in the wholesaling game as of like 2 months ago, but I don't do much other than a couple meetings, a month to kind of just update and point and say, hey, do this. Where I shined with off market stuff was, if I'm in the house and I'm talking to people, I'm good at the personal stuff, but the creative financing, that's where I shined. Was if a deal wasn't going to work for another wholesaler, I was buying stuff myself. And so I never put a property under contract that I wasn't okay closing personally. And so I never lost a deal, which gave me a huge edge with my title company, because I could just tell people like, if you got questions, concerns, call the title company. They'll confirm for you, that I have 100% closing rate, because if I don't find a buyer for this, I'm going to take it down. And then that opened doors to, this one might not work the best as a wholesale, so a lot of people were passing on it, but I can do it creatively because I'm going to hold it. So I even had a deal once where, actually I did this 2 or 3 times, but the one in question, we bought it. He wanted 50. We got him down to like 38. We were at like 32 on this thing. It had a fire. It was a full gut, and nobody else would touch it over 30. And we were like, dude, we can give you 32. He wouldn't budge. And so I asked him just kind of out of the blue, I was like, would you take the 38 that you want if we paid you once we sold the flip? And he liked the deal. So we bought it. I paid property taxes. I paid like $639 in property taxes at closing. Other than that, no payments, no interest. And when we sold the house, we paid him the 38 back.
Nice. And
so we flipped that one, and it was pretty cool. So a lot of creative stuff like that. But to I guess, fully circle back, I definitely prefer buy and hold. I viewed wholesaling and off market deals as a means to an end to find deals for myself at a better discount. And I do still dabble.
Yeah. And you know what? I definitely have spoken to some rehabbers and buy and hold investors that say, hey, I want my own source of deals. So I do know that it does kind of happen backwards, but most of them end up not really. They might partner with somebody with the wholesaler and give them some marketing dollars. But, actually kind of building that out is impressive. I do want to kind of deep dive it a little bit and hear about kind of you guys' strategies. But I do want to highlight what you just mentioned. And, for all the people that think that creative deal making is scary and because there are so many options, right? So many ways you can, put a deal together, but it can be as simple as what you just mentioned of, hey, you want this amount, this number, this amount of money. And, most people can't, buy the property and give you that at this time. So if you give us some time, to actually do the renovations, we'll pay you that amount at the end of our project. Like that is just a straight up, creative financing deal that you put terms together and, then you paper it. And I think that there's a lot of folks that are out there that can assist one with then writing it up the right way and having the protections in place for both parties. So it's just sometimes just thinking outside of the box like that. So I'm glad that you highlighted that deal and kind of makes it a little bit more easier and attainable for some folks that are listening that is like, hey, I don't want to deal with any creative other than cash deals. So
yeah, I love creative financing. I think people shoot themselves in the foot really two ways. One, they don't do enough homework to be able to speak intelligently to it. And two, because of that, they just walk into a deal or the MLS and they're like, hey, are you open to seller financing? And the problem with that is most homeowners don't know what that is. And so the only person who's going to say yes to that, other than like, because the agent's going to go and be like, do you want cash now or do you want like less cash over the next 10 years? Like they don't know how to pitch it. And so that homeowner, if they know what seller financing is, they're going to be like, oh yeah, 20% down, 10% interest, 25-year AM with a 5-year balloon and a massive prepayment penalty. Sure, I'll take it. And those are terrible terms because if the homeowner knows what they're doing with seller financing, the only way they're going to just like voluntarily throw it out is if it's beneficial to them. And then most people don't know what it is. So they just say, no, I'll stick to what I know. And the way that you actually sell creative financing is talking directly to the seller, knowing what their needs are, and you bring it up as a solution without, you don't mention interest. You don't mention, you just, hey, I hear that you need $10,000 to move from here to here. What if I could give you that $10,000 a day and then I could cover your payments for the rest of whenever, or whatever their problem is. And you bring it up as just a solution. You don't bring it up as this scary unknown concept. You just have a normal conversation about it, but you have to know it and understand it well enough to do that and actually know the seller.
Yeah, that's gold. That is really golden, man. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you breaking that down and making it a little bit more attainable for folks. And so just to pivot a little bit and kind of go back to the wholesaling business, what were the marketing channels like, when you went down this path to wholesaling or, marketing to off-market property owners, right? What path did you guys take? What did the organization look like? And what were you guys' exit strategies?
Yeah, my biggest initial lead source was direct mail. I did a little bit of texting. We had some decent responses, but I live in a market where there's still a lot of landlines, I guess. So there were we probably had a 30% just not go through rate, whatever they call that metric. And then
I'm laughing at the market with a bunch of landlines. It must have been an older community, huh?
Yeah. Just, Midwest Missouri, right? A bunch of farmers or whoever. And so we went from direct mail. We did a little texting. One of my best lead sources was pay per lead. So for anyone who doesn't know, that's basically running Google ads, except that you're letting a company run Google ads for you and you just pay when they land leads. So you pay a little bit more per lead, but you don't have to manage the process at all. And so we had some success with some pay per lead companies, direct mail, and then eventually we scaled to where we had two cold callers working for us. And so I would have, they'd make probably 10 or 20,000 calls a month. And then we'd be sending out 2,000 or 3,000 letters. And between the two of those, I would say we were probably at like 1,300 or 1,400 a contract for cold calling. We were at like 1,200 a contract for direct mail. Pay per lead, we were probably closer to like 1,600 or 1,700 per deal. But it was also like they come to you, so not nearly as difficult to manage.
Right. Love that. And the average deal size in your market for these strategies was about what? Yeah,
we're on the wholesale side, probably between 12 and 15. And then on the flip side, if we took it down ourselves, we wanted to see about a 30K, basically double whatever we could wholesale it for if we were going to mess with it. So 30 to 40 was probably our average.
That's good returns. If you're spending $1,000 to $1,500 per lead to do a deal, that hopefully you're netting $10,000 to $15,000 in a deal. Good numbers, good returns. I was going to ask, with your pay per lead companies, what are some of your favorites? I think this is a newer term that people are saying now because, pay per click is something that we all know about, but there's more pay per lead companies that are coming up. I think I've heard some, anywhere from $1,000 for 10 leads type packages. And hopefully you close one in that 10. What were some of the companies that you like to work with best?
Really the only one that I would probably turn somebody on to right now is the need to sell my house fast. There were a couple different companies that I messed with, but that was the only one I ever actually landed a deal from. And what I liked about that one, this is kind of messed up. You bid it up by zip code or by county. Let's say, I've seen that. Yeah, they're like, okay, Greene County, everything starts at $75. And then depending on how active that county is, people bid it. So let's say you're the only person investing there, you buy the leads for $75 a pop. If you're investing there for $75 and I come in, I can either match you at 75 and they'll split how many leads. And you don't know, they're smart. They don't tell you how many people you're competing with. So it could be 4 people all tied at 75 and you have no idea. So most people then will bid it to 100 and they'll be like, I'll pay $100 a lead. And so I get all of them until I reach my monthly cap for how much I want to spend. And then the rest go to 75. But then it notifies the other people, hey, you've been outbid. And so I would go in and I'd play this game when I wanted to mess with the county where I knew there was one other person and I'm pretty sure I know who it was in my market. And it's like the old marketing adage, right? Whoever can pay the most per lead wins. And so right. I would bid that thing up to like $350. I think at one point we were like 400 a lead, and just to make sure, keep
him out of it.
Oh yeah. So it was a mess. So there were 2 counties in the area that kind of popped off, and they were always around like between 150 and 350 a lead. Everything else, like all the smaller counties, were like $75. So nice. Who cares? But
good stuff. And so this team, you guys are generating leads. How did acquisitions look? Were you, doing in-person closes, virtual? How did that look?
Yeah, my title company is pretty rad, so I could close everything virtually just because they knew me. I would occasionally show up, but usually not. And
specifically, when I say close, I mean closing the seller. Yeah. So, getting them under contract. Were you going out to these properties in person, or have a local virtual acquisitions model?
Yeah, I ran circles around virtual wholesalers because I would show up in person. So I would show up in person. I had it used to be my desk, but I don't know where it is right now. But I had a pamphlet, like an open, nice high vis printed, like opening pamphlet that was like full size, printed out about like the company, who we are, my property manager, like we're local, how the process works, whatever, that I would hand them when I first walked in. I'd tell them the process. I'd walk the house. I'd take a bunch of pictures. I'd make sure they saw me documenting damage. And then we talk about the condition of the property. And then a lot of times, we probably closed 20-30% of the ones that we went to right there. And then if probably 10 or 20% as we scaled, and then if we didn't close it, if we knew there was another wholesaler in the area, we would then hand them this package. I can't remember the actual name that I called it, but essentially like a credibility slip that would go inside of the folder. And I would only give it to them if I knew there was another person trying to bid the deal. And that was basically like a subtle FU to whoever else was in my market, because in my market, nobody pays earnest money, and they don't usually have proof of funds, and they whatever. And so it would be like, hey, if you're going to sell to someone, make sure they do these things. And it was like, make sure they have proof of funds, because I do, and I know they don't. Make sure they, are willing to give you $1,000 earnest money, because I will, and they probably won't. Make sure they, call the title company and see what their reputation is. Here's my title rep's number. He'll tell you I've closed every property I've ever, so we would leave that with people, and we'd get callbacks after they had 2 or 3 other people out there who were like, because most wholesalers, especially virtual ones, they will leave a clause in their contract that says, I can basically pull chocks up to the day of closing for any reason if I can't sell this contract. And I would eat their lunch, because in that thing, I'd be like, hey, if they have any bullet like this, you run. I will buy your house in a way where I guarantee that even if I don't find a buyer, I'll buy it personally. So I don't have that clause. I'm closing on your house. And so we'd land deals, at higher price points, I think, than other wholesalers, or better price points than other wholesalers, just because we were willing to stick to that.
Very cool. I love that. I actually want to see how you drafted that up. Maybe we can talk offline, but that's something similar that I will say, especially just being in the business, having experience. I will similarly say, hey, make sure that when due diligence is over, make sure that they deposited earnest money, etc. But I love that idea of leaving a slip, and giving that FU to the other wholesaler that shows up. I love that idea, man. Well, look, before we jump into maybe breaking down one of these deals in our deal diary segment, I just want to go back and touch on what we started off talking about, which, I know you got your start with house hacking, and folks, apologize for not sharing, exactly what that is, but you find a duplex or something and you move into one side and you rent the other, so that the one that's rented is paying the mortgage and you're basically living rent free, mortgage free. That is a strategy, right, to kind of get going and start growing. And I know you mentioned that your network kind of helped propel you to continue to grow and build in that way. Talk about the financing piece. Like, did you start to raise money? Did you go traditional routes? Like, how did you continue the train going to be able to amass the amount of doors? Or maybe it was creative financing, but give us a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff. And for reference, right, I've probably, we've got 100 and whatever doors and probably 60, 70 actual transactions at this point. And I have never paid more than 15% down on a property. Now, I'm not necessarily telling people that that's the way to do it, because there's all the fears about over leveraging and whatever. So you got to I would not recommend you go that hardcore on a market that doesn't really cash flow. It's all going to be different based on whatever. But I did a lot of creative stuff at the beginning. When we do the deal deep dive, I'll go into a little bit more details on probably my favorite deal ever, which was that second property I bought. It's 10 unit. And I bought it for, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, I'm sure, but 10% seller financing, 85% bank financing, and I brought 5% down. And then I did a bunch of creative stuff. I mean, I've bought houses 0 down, no interest, seller financing. I bought houses 0 down, no interest, no payments until you sell the house. I've done lease options. I've a lot of creative stuff, but then I also networked with a bunch of local lenders, and I found a hyper local portfolio lender, meaning they hold every loan in house, that would do 85% loan to value, and they would do 85% loan to value with no seasoning period. So I could literally buy a house cash on Monday, and on Tuesday say, hey, we need to order an appraisal for this. And within probably 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks was the fastest I ever had this done, they would refinance 85% of whatever it was worth. So I bought a house at one point for $80,000, probably 60, 65, put 10,000 into paint and some basic crap. It appraised at 100, and I pulled all of my money back out plus $6,000 in less than a month. And so I was able to do a lot of that kind of crazy stuff. And the best part was, as you start scaling on social media and talking about this stuff, it becomes easier and easier to find private lenders. So I'd say, hey, if you fund 100% of the purchase, 100% of the rehab, and you're okay with me, I'll pay you 1 point, 10% interest. But if you're okay with me paying all the points and interest on the back end, then I'll pay you 2 points and 10% interest, or 1 point and 12% interest, or, whatever. And so, a lot of other people's money.
Love it. OTP and seller finance is the way to go, with some mix of traditional lenders, hyper local lenders. I love that. How did you learn and grow into figuring all this out? Because it's in the beginning it is tough, right? To say, hey, I'm going to go out and start building a portfolio based on, creating and structuring these deals. Did you have a mentor that specifically helped you out? Did you just learn along the way? Give us some background on that.
Yeah, I had a ton of mentors. I have a very love-hate with that term. especially now, because like the bigger you get, right? People reach out every day about being a mentor. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I run this mastermind group. If you jump in there, I do an office hours call every single week. You get me one, there's like 10 people on it. Ask me any question you want, anytime, show up. And then they're like, oh, and you never hear from them again, because what they don't want is a mentor. What they do want is a handholder. They want you to do everything for them. So I have a love-hate, because people have just ruined that for me. So what I did, I never wanted to be that guy, right? I never wanted to be the, will you be my mentor guy? So I would pay to play if I was going to be in your group, or find a way to bring value. Hey, if I'm not paying to play, I'm going to be an affiliate for your course, and I'm going to bring you one way or another. This is going to be worth your time monetarily. I had a buddy in Hawaii who I found a deal that I thought would make a good flip. And I was like, hey, if I give this to you, will you just let me be involved in the process? And so he ended up giving me like $5,000 as a thank you. But he said his normal finder fee is like 15 or 20. I didn't. I was like, I'm not taking your money. Like, let me, I just want to learn. And, ultimately I got to be the one to help design the kitchen on that and a lot of the stuff. And then I got to be really in person, intimate with this property, while somebody who flips 5, 10 property. Well, I think he's flipping like 20, 30 properties a year, making $100K a piece, minimum, when I worked with him. And so, big time house flipper at the time, the biggest on the island. And I got to learn with him that way. But then what I would do, if I'm not paying to play and I'm not like bringing a deal to you and saying, yo, let me just watch you work. I just fostered genuine, and this is what I tell people all the time, fostered genuine relationships with people who specialized in things I wanted to learn. And then I would just ask them, I would just build a relationship with them. And you're not asking all the time. Don't be an asshole. Just if you build enough genuine relationships, like right now, you could probably ask me about darn near anything. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I got a guy that I can talk to about that. I got somebody I can ask questions about that. And it's just because I fostered relationships without asking, for stuff. So now it's like, if I need something, I know who to call, and they're going to be willing to help me, because I've done nothing but try to provide value and be a genuine friend. And so I don't necessarily have a mentor, but to answer your question on like the creative financing specifically, it was a guy named Chad King, who used to be the acquisitions manager for Blackjack Real Estate with 7-figure flipping. He gave me access to his course on that for, well, we'll just leave it there. Let's say we worked out an affiliate thing.
Thanks.
I got access to Ryan Dossie. He's not actually a huge seller finance guy, but I found 2 or 3 people who were good at seller finance and wholesaling, and just was like, hey, how do I add value to your community? Which becomes exorbitantly easier as your community grows. When you've got a 60,000 person Facebook group and you're like, yo, I'll pimp your stuff out and, showcase what I'm learning and point back to you. People are often very willing to help you out.
Yeah, I love it. Last thing, I know we got to get going, but I wanted to just ask, did you then start to target deals that were better positioned to for a seller to accept owner finance, or did you just continue on marketing like you would normally market, and when the deals came, try to work it out, hey, this is a hole, I want to take this down, let's do creative financing?
Yeah, no, I'm sure at some point I tried to target them, but really I just marketed broad strokes and used creative financing as a strategy when wholesaling didn't work. So if I could buy the house low enough price that it made sense to wholesale or cash or flip, then I would. And if the pricing wasn't quite right, then it became a your price, my terms conversation with like, look, the only way this is going to get done is one of these more creative options. And I'm still messing with it. I've got an option right now for a portfolio of 32 single family houses for $5 million, and the owner's willing to seller carry 25% down. So, I'd be able to get in for $0.
Nice. Very cool.
Diligence.
Man, well, look, real quick, the Deal Diary segment, any crazy story, wild deal that you put together, amazing deal. Tell us about it. Break it down for us.
Yeah, I mean, to keep it short because of, I know you want to get your lightning round, but the 10 units, my favorite deal I ever did. This thing, I was sending letters for duplexes. This guy called me. He's like, I'm not selling my duplex, but I got this 10 unit that I've been trying to get rid of and just no luck. And
even better.
Yeah. So this was my second deal. I was nervous about it, but again, I'd surrounded myself with people that were doing stuff. So I just ran it. I was like, hey, this is my numbers. Do you see any red flags? I didn't ask him to analyze the deal, but I showed him what I came up with and just asked if I'd missed anything major. Smart. And I got 3 people that I trust who all said, no, it looks good. And I was like, like, we're in. He wanted 240. I negotiated down to like 225. This is in Missouri in 2017. The property actually is pending right now at 550 to somebody else. So, pricing's definitely changed, but, ended up with some inspection stuff. I got him down to like 212 and a half. So we bought it at 212.5. And what happened is at closing, the bank had not realized that we dropped from 225 to 212.5. And they showed up with the original check amount. And they were like, hey, we can either delay closing a few days while we rework the paperwork, or you can just bring less down. And the seller had already agreed to cover 10% as a down. I was like, that's easy. I'll go get a smaller check. And so I brought $10,960 to the table and closed this thing. And then 4 years to the day later, I sold it. So we bought it at 212.5. I sold it for 340, and it cash flowed every year I owned it. So, 10x my original investment in 4 years plus whatever cash flow and depreciation. So it's sick.
Love it. That's amazing. And you mentioned just real quick, just as you mentioned that the seller brought some money down. Was it just for the original mortgage payoff? What did you mean when the seller paid?
Basically, I was like, dude, I was looking for duplexes. I don't have the capital to buy a 10 right now. I'm still new and I'm in the military. Is there any way you'd be willing to, take a second position lien as part of the down payment to cover what I can't? And he wanted the property gone, so he agreed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's an amazing deal. And I love those good deals, that, pay you now, pay you in the middle, and pay you later. So amazing. Look, I can't let you go without putting you through the lightning round. Are you ready for that?
Let's do it.
All right. Awesome. Look, rapid fire questions. You don't know the question. I don't know your answer. So just say the very first thing that comes to your mind. What's one book that's been instrumental to your growth as a real estate investor?
Actually, I would say the one that I read this year that I really love is 10X is easier than 2X. And I wish I'd read that 4 years ago, but it didn't exist yet.
Love it. I gotta check that out. If you could have drinks or coffee with any one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Elon Musk, because that dude has transformed every industry he touches, and he's just freaking hilarious. If you've ever heard his McLaren F1 story, I love that guy. He's the long story short is he wrecked his McLaren F1 driving to a meeting with Peter Thiel, the founder or co-founder of PayPal. This is $1 million car, and gets out of the car, totaled it. He's laughing while they're waiting on a taxi, and Peter's like, "What's so funny?" And Elon's like, "Oh, you don't know the best part. I didn't have insurance on it." And then they caught an Uber to the ride or to the meeting. Like, I love that dude.
That's crazy. Look, what is one mistake that you've made on a deal or business in general that if you could do it over, you would take that do over?
Trusting people. I'm a 99I. I trust people way too easily. And that has bit me in the ass more than any other thing. And there's a whole lot of specifics I could go into, but that's the long short. My attorney has told me at least 3, if not 4 times, you would have saved over 10 grand had you just talked to me before you did this. So, yeah.
That's hilarious. Awesome. What is your best advice for someone looking to do their very first creative financing deal?
Actually understand how creative financing works, what the benefits are to the seller, and then don't pitch it as a purchasing option. Pitch it as a solution to their problems and actually understand their problems. Yeah,
that was great advice when you gave it earlier. I really like that. What's the financial goal that you have for, let's say, the wholesaling business that you're a part of? What is that company's financial goal for this calendar year?
Well, we are just getting it off the ground, but the goal is to do 4 or 5 deals a month and net $8,000 to $10,000 a deal.
All right. Love it. Love it. Love it. If you woke up tomorrow with $500 million deposited into your account overnight, what's the first thing that you would go out and purchase with that newfound money?
Oh boy, I'd be all over some cars, a private jet. Travel would be way easier. So the first 100 mil easy would go to a travel fund, travel like a jet, probably 2 or 3 exotic cars. I've been a car guy my whole life. And then, man, I would take 200,000 of that and stick it somewhere like bonds, CDs, insurance annuity, like just one of those places where it grows slowly, but it does not lose. And I would play defense. And then the other 200K or 200 mil, boy, I'd buy a bunch of real estate with no debt and just enjoy the ride.
There you go.
maybe some businesses.
Last one, best advice for someone looking to scale their portfolio. Say maybe they have a rental, maybe they've done a few deals, and they're really wanting to grow. Well, what advice would you give that person?
Get around people that have already scaled and just build relationships. And that's whether you're paying to be in a group or you're just forming relationships with investors in your local area that are crushing it. Just having those connections will take you further than just about anything else you can do.
Good stuff, man. Well, this has been amazing. You were able to really give us a lot of great information about how you built your buy and hold, all the doors that you have, the wholesaling business, some really great tips on, being able to close where others can't, separating yourself from other wholesalers, along with the tips that you gave us on creative financing. This has been awesome. How can people follow along with your journey? You have a site that you want to send them to so they can check out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. If they go to thebestpodcastguest.com, it'll take them to a page where they can download my free PDF copy of my book, and then it has a link to all my social media.
Good stuff. Amazing. Look, guys, while you're at it, head over to sendmoreoffers.com. There's nothing for sale there, just a bunch of great information, show notes, from all these great speakers, as well as you can connect with me there. If you have a deal in Atlanta, give me a shout at sendmoreoffers.com. I love it. Your site will be in the show note, links to all your social. Man, this has been great. I want to continue following along with your journey. Keep crushing it, man. And, definitely look me up if you're in Atlanta sometime soon.
Absolutely, brother. And thank you for having me on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Guys, as always, till next time, send more offers, do more deals. Peace.
That's all for this episode of the Send More Offers Real Estate Show with Brandon Barnes. But we know you're craving more knowledge to get yourself ready for that next deal. To schedule a call with Brandon to learn more about how to do deals consistently without seller appointments in a repeatable way, be sure to visit us at sendmoreoffers.com. And be sure to tune in for the next episode of the Send More Offers Real Estate Show.